These are the brand new Nothing Headphones 1, and in some ways they create a new standard for Bluetooth headphones. In other ways, they fall short. But how do they actually compare to the titans of the industry, widely considered to be one of the best pairs of Bluetooth headphones on the market, the Sony WH-1000XM6 headphones? Well, I wanted to really dig into this comparison and make it analytical. So in this video, I'll be comparing these two head-to-head in 10 different categories to see how they stack up in terms of design, sound quality, ANC, transparency, microphones, and anything else I think you need to know to not only make this informed decision if you're deciding between the two of them, but also give you a better idea of what these Nothing headphones. Maybe you're not even interested in Sony, you just want to know more about these Nothing headphones. What do they do well? What do they do better than the best in the industry? And how do they perform relative to the best in terms of ANC and sound quality? Like I said, those are kind of subjective, and some people will just say they're good, but how good are they actually? Well, I wanted to make this comparison to answer that question. Let's start off with the design before getting into the sound quality and ANC, because the design is obviously a very intriguing part of these headphones, but functionally a very impressive part of these headphones as well. So let's look at these designs. Obviously the aesthetics are going to be very different, and I'll let you comment down below on which one you think looks better, but fundamentally we have two different colors on the Nothing headphones. The white color, which is very silvery right here. There's also a black colorway, but the white one I think just looks really good in a lot of lighting. Very unique. You can see it looks like a cassette tape on the side of your head. There is a red square that indicates the right side, as well as some really unique font on the inside that says right instead of just a basic R and L. But otherwise, it's not like a real poka-yoke design. So the ear cups rotate in 90 degrees to be perfectly flat. The other direction, they really don't rotate more than maybe 5 or 10 degrees. Sony rotates a lot more in that direction, not that it really matters. They rotate maybe 45 degrees in that direction, and again, 90 degrees to fold flat. Even though they both fold flat, Sony also folds up a little bit, so it gets slightly smaller when it goes in the case. I'll talk more about the case in a second, but one thing that Sony has kind of been going under heat for a while now is the hinge durability. I have never had problems with my hinges, but it's worth noting other people have had problems with previous generations on the hinges wearing out. Now, if you rattle them, there is a little bit of rattle with these, but they feel a lot stiffer and sturdier than previous generations. If you rattle the Nothing headphones, these also feel quite stiff and quite sturdy, although they do feel a little bit heavier. The headband adjusts slightly differently, so rather than having the little stems kind of slide out on the bottom of the headband, the top expands, and it's just a slightly different way of doing it. Both of these fortunately come with a nice firm case to protect your headphones, but they are different in size. So Nothing headphones, because they don't fold up, they just fold flat, the case is going to be a good bit larger, and it does have a zipper. Sony this year came out with a new case that kind of snaps shut with a magnet, and it stays shut incredibly well. Something Nothing added to these headphones that basically nobody in the industry does is a waterproof rating. So these are IP52 water and dust resistant. Sony doesn't have any kind of rating, even though they should be okay for like sweat and drizzle. It's technically not rated for that. Both of them do have removable ear cups. It's quite easy to do, although it is a little bit alarming when you first pull it, but trust me, I just did it. It didn't break. You just pull them straight off, and you can replace the ear cups if they ever do wear out, or if maybe you just wanted a different color on there. Now, getting into the next category of the controls, this, in my opinion, is a huge win for the Nothing headphones. Even though these are cheaper, these headphones absolutely crush it in this one category because they just kind of thought of things differently. So rather than having touch controls on the outside, which can be finicky if you're wearing gloves, or if you're just adjusting your headphones and accidentally control that, and also instead of having just blind buttons that you can't really tell which one's which, the Nothing headphones have really unique controls. So when I put them on, if I put my hand like this, my two fingers are perfectly placed on the rocker switch, which is for forward and back songs, or you can press and hold it to fast forward or rewind songs, depending on what platform you're using. That doesn't always work perfectly, but skipping tracks always does work. And my other finger, my middle finger, is on the button that is going to be play and pause, and you can also roll it back and forth, a really satisfying feeling there, and that is going to be your volume. There's another button over here, kind of where your ring finger sits, or maybe my pinky, I guess, would sit there. You could also just grab it a different orientation, and that is going to be like an AI button. With any Android phone or an iPhone, it's just going to summon like Siri or Google Assistant. But if you have a Nothing phone, there's some other things you could do, some other cool tricks I'll talk about later on. On the bottom, we have a switch. I really like that there's a physical switch to turn these on and off rather than pressing and holding a button. Just a really satisfying switch. You can glance at this and know, yes, my headphones are off. You don't have to put them on and try to listen and see if they're on or off. You can just see the red on the bottom and know you're not going to drain your battery. And you'll notice there is no pairing button on the outside. When you want to put these in pairing mode, of course they do have like swift pair and fast pair and all the normal stuff for that. But if you want to, put them in a specific pairing mode, you can press and hold the Bluetooth button, which is hidden on the inside of the headphones. I think that's a big win, but Sony is not new to having controls, and they pack this thing full of features. There's only 2 buttons on here. One is the power button, which has an indent and is very easy to identify with your thumb. The other button, it switches between ambient mode and noise cancellation. There's also a touchpad on the right ear. You can swipe up and down on here. You can double tap to play pause. So swiping is going to be your volume. You can swipe forward and back to control your songs as well, to go forward a song and back a song. Overall, it is very, very intuitive, and I like the way they do that. You can also nod and shake your head for, I think, like answering or rejecting phone calls. And there's the palm coverage option where if you're wearing these, you have ANC on, you hear a sudden announcement on your train or plane or whatever, you just cup your hand over the ear cup, it'll turn your music way down, it'll turn on transparency, you can hear your surroundings until you let go, and then it turns the music and the ANC back on. So I think Sony really adds a lot of great functional controls, but I just think the way Nothing executed the little roller and the little switch on the side, I think those are better to have buttons if you're wearing gloves or in any environment where maybe your hands are wet, maybe you're sweaty, maybe otherwise you're not going to be ideal with the touch controls on the side of Sony headphones. But again, this one's a little bit more subjective. You guys can let me know which you would actually prefer. But of course, how does the active noise cancellation compare? A lot of people are saying that these have great ANC, and for what they are, they definitely do have some pretty decent ANC. But when compared to the Sony, or for that matter, Bose headphones or AirPods Max, those are kind of the 3 industry leaders right now. Unfortunately, it's just not quite at that level. I would say it's really not even close. These feel a lot more like mid-range caliber ANC, but I'll show some numbers on the screen. Essentially what I do is I have 3 different tests. I'll play an airplane noise at a set distance away, turn it up until the headphones are no longer able to block that, and measure how many decibels the headphones are actually blocking from a very experiential standpoint. I do the same test with higher voices, and then the other test I'll do is just in a silent environment, how much white noise do we actually have? And the good news is they both have essentially 0 white noise, which is very impressive. So Nothing has good ANC in a quieter environment. They do a great job of blocking out air conditioners, refrigerators, different things like that. Nothing also gives us multiple levels in the app, so you can have like low ANC, high ANC, you have adaptive ANC, so that should help you with the battery level as well. As far as transparency goes, I mean, Nothing really brought it on this one. So Sony has a slight advantage of having a slider. You can control how much you actually get through, where Nothing does not. But I mean, the sound really is quite good on both of them for transparency. I think if you're trying to find a difference, like honestly, you're just splitting hairs. These both do a great job with transparency. So great job to Nothing for coming out with some pretty decent transparency on your first pair of headphones. A slight caveat with that though is if you are going outside with this, wearing these headphones, I noticed because you have the microphone on the bottom, kind of a corner right there, you are going to be getting significantly more wind noise wearing the Nothing headphones if there is any kind of breeze outside. All right, so let's get into a microphone test. So no, this is a microphone test with the Nothing Headphones 1 indoors, a pretty ideal studio environment. So let me know how this sounds compared to the Sonys. Also, side note, I'm wearing a different shirt. It's a different day. I had to re-record this segment right here because I had a little error the first time I was recording it, unrelated to the headphones, but regardless, let's continue this test. And this is the microphone from the Sony WH-1000XM6 headphones. I can explain what the name is while we're at it. I might as well. So WH is wireless headphones for Sonys compared to WF, which are their earbuds wireless free. And then 1000 just means their highest level. They've got like 700 and other lower levels. And then X, I actually don't know what the X means, but M6 means Mark 6. These are the 6th generation of these headphones. Kind of a fun little fact while we're testing out the microphone. But let's go outside and see how these compare in a louder environment where there is that wind and some traffic as well. All right, now for an outdoor test with the Nothing Headphone 1. Again, some traffic behind me, still no breeze. These, from my earlier testing, both did a pretty decent job, but it's going to be interesting to see how they handle compression of your voice differently and how much ambient sound actually gets let through. All right, so this is an outdoor microphone test in front of a busy road. There's clearly some traffic behind me. There's not really much wind right now, but let me know how this microphone sounds compared to the Nothing headphones. Okay, so we're moving along with this comparison. Let's talk about the fit and the comfort of these. So the Nothing headphones have a pretty strong clamping force, so maybe anyone with smaller heads would also be able to wear these quite well. I found that the Sony headphones, anyone who has a smaller head, they do get a little bit loose. I've had people complain about them, but Sony's kind of known for having a lot of heat in your ears. Like if you're wearing them, they definitely do get hot. The Nothing headphones, still can get warm. I think they get a little bit less hot for me personally compared to the Sonys, but we are getting a slightly more firm foam on the outside compared to the Sonys. Maybe that's just because I've been wearing these a lot more and maybe they break in a little bit over time, but they do, at least to me, feel softer on the Sony headphones. The weight is also a little bit heavier on the Nothing headphones, or at least perceived to be heavier when you're wearing them, just because of the way it's distributed down on the bottom. And the range of headband sizes, so like I said, Nothing could probably work with smaller heads, and if we expand it all the way out, they do get quite large. Sony expands kind of vertically instead of outwards, so kind of an interesting way that they change their size if you look at them compared to the minimum size. So I think it's going to depend on what you're doing with these headphones to decide which one fits and is more comfortable for you. But if you are going to, not that these are meant for working out, but if you're going to work out with them, let's do a little head shake test. Okay, so the Nothing headphones do come off. The Sony headphones also come off, but slightly differently. The headband kind of just rolls forward for me. Honestly, neither one's going to be great for working out. So, another category that is kind of a little bit debated with these new headphones is how do they sound? So some people are praising the sound by Kef on there. So Kef makes a lot of hi-fi speakers. I think they make like one pair of earbuds and one pair of headphones. I've seen those in the past. And so some people really like that partnership. Some people really don't like that. I've honestly heard both sides. My own experience after listening to these, the sound is actually like pretty good considering it's the first pair of headphones from Nothing, but the tuning is not quite right yet. Like fortunately, there's a really, really good EQ in the app. Honestly, the best EQ I've seen in any headphones app that definitely can mitigate it or really help it a good amount. But the sound to me feels kind of nasal and boxy. It sounds a bit like maybe the lower mids, so maybe like 400 to 600 hertz region is a bit bloated, and they seem like they lack a little bit of articulation and detail in like the 1000 to 5 or 6000 hertz zone. Like that range feels like it needs a little bit more. The bass is also a bit less tight on these, a little bit less controlled, and that does seem to change if I have ANC on or off. But the tuning honestly just sounds a little bit like a miss. Besides the tuning, I feel like they're very capable headphones. Like I feel like they could be better, and using the EQ, you can really change a lot with them and make them sound the way you want. Again, that is fairly subjective, but at least that's my opinion on them. Now, Sony's sound is, I would say, quite impressive considering their Bluetooth headphones. Like no Bluetooth headphones are going to be as good as wired, like audiophile grade headphones, but these are certainly much better than previous generations of the Sony XMart or 1000X series. I think that they are still a bit U-shaped, so they feel like they emphasize the highs and they emphasize the lows a little bit more than I would like, but Sony does have a lot of clarity. The highs are definitely crisp, and while it is pretty full, it's not massively overpowering with the lows. The lows they feel like they're kind of punchy, they're controlled, they're not super boomy, but like I said, it is still a little bit overemphasized on the lows. The Sony headphones, not to make a weird analogy here, but if we were gonna compare the Sony headphones to an image taken from a camera, they feel like an over-sharpened and very contrasty image, which is fun. It's a cool image to look at, but it's not like it's not the most natural. Sony, I think, if they're gonna improve it, I think they could be a little bit more natural sounding. So comparing them overall side by side, I think it comes as no surprise that I prefer the Sony headphones here when it comes to audio. It's sort of expected. I mean, this is their 6th generation of making these headphones, plus many years of wired headphones. They're also definitely more expensive, but all things considered, Nothing is a lot better than I expected considering this is their first pair of headphones. And I think if we step back and kind of zoom out on this one, a non-enthusiast would enjoy these headphones, but I think if a non-enthusiast, like someone who doesn't listen to audio all the time on different audio products, if somebody who is non-enthusiast listened to both of these, I do think you would notice a difference, and I do think most people would like the XM6 better. That's just my opinion. But like I said, I think a lot of non-audiophiles would still definitely like the Nothing headphones. Both of these do have SPC, AAC, and LDAC. Interestingly, Nothing kind of deviated away from having LHDC, which we saw on the Nothing Ear 2, and on here, they just have LDAC, which is it's a nice high-resolution codec, very compatible on a lot of other devices. Not only do you have an 8-band EQ, but for each level, you can control which frequency that is adjusting, and you have Q values as well, which kind of widen or narrow the shape of the wave. And another win for Nothing is actually in the battery life. So Sony's claimed to have 30 hours with ANC on, but you can extend it a little bit with ANC off. Honestly, if you're using these headphones, you're probably keeping ANC on. And then the Nothing headphones are 35 hours with ANC on and claimed 80 hours with ANC off. Now, getting into one of the last categories, one that I think is really interesting and makes a big difference to me, these are the features. So Sony has no USB Type-C audio playback. Nothing does have that. So if you're using these at a desk and you want to just plug in to your laptop to listen to audio, take meetings, and you never want to worry about like your headphones dying or disconnecting, then that's a huge win for the Nothing headphones. The Sony headphones do have a lot of features in the app. One of them is called Speak to Chat. So if you just start talking, it'll just turn your volume down, turn on the transparency, and you can have a conversation. Sony also has this background music feature, which if you wanted to feel like you're in a cafe, but your ears are more hot than you would be in a cafe, then you can wear these headphones and play music, and it'll make it sound like it's surrounding you in the room and not so much right in your ears. They also have DSEE Extreme to kind of upscale some music if it's like a lower resolution. Both of these do have wear detection, so if you take them off your head, they'll automatically pause. Great for podcasts. They'll automatically play when you put them back on. And if you do pair your Nothing phone with the Nothing headphones, then you have a few other features like voice notes, essential space, the news reporter widget. But looking at the Nothing app, we also do have low lag mode on here. They do both have multi-point connectivity, which I love to see. Connect to your laptop, and if you get a phone call, it'll just seamlessly switch over to your phone. You can answer the phone like that. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot of unique features on Nothing unless you're connected to a Nothing phone, but Nothing does have Find My headphones, which makes them chirp. Kind of interesting, kind of unique. So the Sony app is changing over time. It now looks a lot cleaner than it did. And you can customize the way this looks and just have some different things on the home screen here. But if you tap into anything, it very quickly turns into the old app where you have like 3 different columns or 3 different tabs essentially. So if I tap on, I don't know, device settings, for example, you have sound, system, and services. So services, it can connect to like Spotify or Amazon Music. System is good for things that are specific to the headphones. And then sound is going to be like how you listen, like what is your EQ and stuff like that. In system, it's worth noting that there's not a whole lot of customization with the buttons and controls, unlike the Nothing headphones, which do seem to have a bit more. And the final category being the price. This again is a big win for Nothing. These are $299 compared to $449 for Sony. Obviously, these are likely to go on sale. That happens all the time. So I will have links down below to both of these if you want to see the latest price. But I still, even though I know it's 50% more expensive for the Sony headphones, there's probably a lot of comments already saying that down there. I still thought this was an interesting comparison to see what Nothing is actually doing better than the best flagships out there and where maybe Sony could improve by copying things from Nothing. So I think these are still pretty impressive headphones. I really like that Nothing came out with a bold swing right away, a lot of different aspects of these headphones. And I think the Nothing headphones too have a lot of potential to possibly even dethrone like Sony and Bose, depending on how they go about it. So I hope you found this video helpful and informative. If you did, consider liking and subscribing, and let me know which of these headphones you'd prefer to buy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.